Yo, welcome back to another episode of Point Forward. My main man, Evan Turner.
Yo.
Myself, Andre Iguodala. We got a very intriguing guest today. Very excited to have a conversation with. He's a face that a lot of people know in the very unique circles of the globe. There's only a few individuals I feel like I've come across like this, and I'm always excited to foster that relationship. With us today, we have the CEO and founder of Qualtrics, a SaaS-based customer experience company, and the governor/owner of the Utah Jazz. Welcome, Mr. Ryan Smith, to the show. Ryan, it's a delight to have you on. I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, good to be with you, fellas.
So I'm kind of gonna give people a backstory of how we even got here today, which is very, very interesting to me. I was talking to E10 about you a couple of times, and over the course of our relationship, it goes back to 2016, I want to say, and I was just getting introduced to what they call enterprise of the tech space. It's different investment sectors. You got fintech, health tech, prop tech, consumer marketplaces, and there's something called enterprise, and I had no idea what that was. And I took an internship with Morgan Stanley's group on the IPO side, who does a lot of public offerings for private companies. And just coming to this enterprise seminar, it was in Deer Valley, Utah. And first thing they said was, we're going to, have different CEOs and founders speaking, and you get to play golf at this terrific golf course not too far. And there was a few folks that would like to play golf, and your name came up right away. So I get out to the golf course, Victory Ranch, beautiful course, one of my favorite courses. And I get to playing with this individual who has this amazing energy, got game. Like ET, this dude got game. You trying to get to where I'm at, ET. I'm trying to get to where he's at. Yeah. So just had he had an athlete's vibe to him, but he's in the business space. He's a CEO, which was unique to me too. We gravitate to those who kind of think like us and move like us and walk like us. How Ho says, my swag like a ball player, and he kind of had that swag. Ryan, remember who was in that group?
He stays with a backwards hat too. I met him in Boston. And I was like, my fault. I coached for Boston last year, and I was like, "Is this an owner?" And they're like, "Yeah, this is an owner." I'm like, "Man, good for them." Shit, you saw me easy. You know what I'm saying?
So Ryan, do you remember who was in that group with us?
I think it was. I want to say I think Paul Kwan was there for a little bit, and
he was
then
there.
I don't remember who else.
Donahoe was in that group.
John Donahoe. All right.
Yes, he
was. He went on to good things.
He went on to
Nike.
He went on to great things. He went on to great things. And then also our guy from SAP was there as well. He's the CEO of ServiceNow.
Bill McDermott.
Bill McDermott.
Company.
Yes. So that's just giving people a background of how we met. And we've kind of been just building that relationship over time. We got some very important golf tournaments to attend when my basketball days are over and done with. So looking forward to that. But this is before you were, the owner of the Jazz. And I think that's just trying to explain to folks how, you never know who you run into. And I think it's important for us all to foster those relationships and not looking to get anything from it, but more than anything, a learning experience. I learned so much that weekend, been learning so much from you over the past couple of years. Appreciate your generosity with your time with me. And let's just jump into it, kind of giving us a background of, how all these things came to fruition. And I think we should start on the business side, because we're trying to teach people, we're pointing forward, guiding people in the directions they should be going, what lanes they should be watching. And it's bigger than just basketball. I always say, in order to become an owner of an NBA team, you have to be able to build something that's special. And I think you did that with Qualtrics. So let's just, kind of dive into that. What was your thought process, and how did you come to build something so special?
Yeah. So look, Qualtrics is, it's crazy, but this is my 20th year. I started this with my dad had this idea when I was 22. He's a researcher, he's an academic, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and enterprise software was never something I dreamed about as a kid. I was supposed to play in the NBA, and then I was supposed to be a professional golfer, and none of that worked out, or it just wasn't the way I went. And so I really got intrigued by this concept. And by the way, starting a business in 2002 was not popular. Like you were in the shadow of the .com, everything had crashed, and we had this idea that, like, wait a minute, we could leverage the beginning of the internet to really capture what people think, like in their hearts and their minds and their souls. And the whole premise was, like, no one likes surprises in business, in life. Like, how do you eliminate surprises? And if we could actually go out before you launched a product, or if someone had a bad customer experience, if you're an employee of a company, and really understand how they're feeling in the moment and get that data back in real time to decision makers, then you can actually operate your business in a pretty smooth way. And historically, that problem was not that seamless. It took time. People didn't do it. They didn't know they could. You only had a couple very smart people in the organization that could ever achieve that. And we wanted to democratize it. We wanted to say, hey, everyone's a data scientist in the world now.
Right.
Everyone has this power. And our mantra was, like, we're easy enough for an intern, but we're sophisticated enough for the most advanced PhD. And, we went out with that mission, and over 20 years and thousands of brands. And I think we're up to almost 17,000 companies around the globe. Every academic institution pretty much is a Qualtrics house. And, little by little, and there wasn't really like these moments of just tipping point where it all went. It's really been hard work the whole way. This has been enterprises just push,
right,
and try to deliver an amazing product and good experience. And it kind of rolls from there. But the premise has stayed the same kind of throughout the whole way. It shifted very much to an experience world where, hey, how do we let brands understand the experience they're providing? Brands are going to mess up. And then the economy shifted with what we were working on. We want to say, hey, we're smart, but what happens as all brands are competing is they realize, like, what differentiates us.
Right.
In an up and a down economy is consumers are able to ship products much easier as new trends are able to come online, and experience, and a good experience is the ultimate moat around whatever you're doing. If your experience at a university is better than everywhere else, that university will go up and continue to thrive. If it's bad, it won't. And then I think if you look at society as well, I think that it carries forward to, like, what are the great experiences of society and which ones are really bad.
Right.
And so, like, I would have never thought that idea in 2002 would be so relevant 20 years later. And that, by the way, I'd still be standing here to, like, be working on it, because the numbers and the odds of both of those things happening are pretty rare.
Yeah, but you think your trip prior to starting a company with your dad and your brother, where were you at, in Korea or South Korea? North Korea or South Korea?
Yeah, when I was 17 years, when I was 17 years old, I grew up in Utah. Both my parents were academics. They kind of gone through a pretty messy divorce when I was like 14. I wasn't on a good track. I wasn't a good high school student. I was a high school dropout. Yeah. And I just kind of said, I'm done with life. Like, I'm done doing it the way everyone else wanted to do. I was a smart kid, but my world had just been rocked, right? And I just kind of given up. And I ended up, like, I had an uncle that kind of brought me in and said, hey, look, come work at this place. And I met some dudes who were like, hey, we just got back from Korea teaching English. You should go. And I'm 17 and my parents are like, well, you can go if you can save enough money. So I sold a car that I had and like got over there. And then that's really where I kind of grew up. Like I learned to work in South Korea. I was on my own. It was the first time away. And like, I also had to like try to find this muscle of like, I have ideas for the first time and I could implement them and then get real-time feedback if they worked. And I had a couple wins. Yeah. Like I had this idea that I was going to like go put flyers up everywhere and teach a bunch of people, and it worked. People started calling me and I was like, damn, like this works. Yeah. Like, where's the next one? Where's the next one? And I think it's a pretty good lesson.
How hype were your parents when you started working that creativity muscle? Because I always find it funny when you see two teachers or two educators and then a kid, there's a girl in my high school, her dad taught me chemistry, and then you hear her just dropping out of college. Like, you know what I mean? I used to always sit there and be like, how the hell is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, with two educators, like I was not going down the right path in their mind. Even when we started Qualtrics, my dad made me go get a job. He's like, well, this isn't a real job. And I was like, Dad, like, we're going to make some money here. And he's like, no, he made me. So I went and got an internship at Hewlett-Packard and then an internship at Ford because he did not believe that this was sustainable because everything else in the dot-com and crashed.
Right.
Yeah. And I had to show him that, no, this is going to be bigger than anything else I could do. And that's kind of how he ran this. He's like, all right, you're the one with the energy. You're the one that would, like, you go make it into something. And so, you know, I think it's just the power of what confidence in a couple wins can do. And you guys know this as athletes, like, you know, when you're making shots, a lot of good things happen. When you're winning games, it solves a lot of everything else around you.
So when I go back to that in South Korea, and you know that tech saying fail fast, how did that help build that mental fortitude when you went over there and you had to really figure it out? You know, you had to figure out, all right, I'm just going to put a bunch of flyers in mailboxes in a foreign country, a place I don't know.
Yeah, you went to Korea in 2002.
That's what I'm saying. You know,
or whatever it was.
We don't see, you know, our youth doesn't see the grind that goes into success. You know, success isn't something that you just walk into, you know, and then as athletes, we see how folks don't understand the parallels or don't get the connection of how we can overcome the things that we overcame. Like, we really had to risk it all. It was either this was all or nothing. And for you to take that trip, you know, was pretty amazing. So are there any things that you learned from that you put into the business?
So I was always a kid, like one of the reasons why like I dropped out of high school was because all my friends were a couple years older than me. Mm-hmm. And I always hung out with that crowd. Well, I went over to Korea with two friends.
Oh, okay.
And after a week, we learned that like we didn't have jobs, we didn't have a place to stay, we didn't have a lot of money. And they all called their parents, and their parents bought them a plane ticket and they left. Well, when I called my dad, he's like, sorry, nothing good for you's happening here. Stick it out. And so as I watched my friends leave, and I'm there at 17, 2 years younger than everyone else, that was a moment where it was like, you're going to sink or swim. And, you know, my parents didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what I was doing over there. They easily could have probably bailed me out. And so as a parent that I am now, I think the question I ask myself is, am I going to let my kids fail? Right? Or is there a mechanism to let my kids fail? Because had my dad caved in, like, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
And I had to develop muscles that I didn't know I had. I had the gears in here somewhere. Like I had the makeup, but I was always operating in first and second. And I had to go to figure out, was there a sixth gear? Is there a seventh gear here quick? And there was. and I had to get good at it. I had to get good at driving in fourth gear.
That's
like
amazing.
I had to figure it out. And for the first time in my life, I had to work. I had to like really work. I had to be completely committed. And then you come back from that to re-engage in the US. And I'm like, whoa, well, this is pretty sweet. I got a house.
Mm-hmm.
I got food. Like I'm already ahead of where I was over there. And to do that at the young age, like my whole life shifted, but it was all on accident. It was all of curiosity. It was also all from, an uncle and some people looking out for me.
Right. So go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so I want to, you said something that was interesting. You said your dad made you work while you were first working on Qualtrics. So when did you realize that you had a viable business and the idea would catch on? Or when did he believe too?
Yeah, I don't this has been such a unique journey. I don't think that we have ever believed we've made it, which is really weird. It's more of a mentality or a mindset. There has not been a eureka moment. Even when we sold our business and the wire came in.
No, I don't think the people know. What was the wire? What was the purchase?
We sold it for $8 billion cash, right?
Billion, okay.
And
cash.
It wasn't a eureka moment. It wasn't a eureka moment. It was much more around okay, well, we're waking up and we're going to go do Qualtrics again tomorrow.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of debate, and you guys get this as athletes, is this about the destination or the journey? Dre, you've won all these championships. What happens? Okay, great. You celebrate for a sec, and then you're like, wait, all I know is how to go hoop tomorrow. I'm at it. And I've seen you. I've spoken to you when you're in these moments of the playoffs and things look really good. And you're so locked in, we suck. We're not there yet. These guys are waking it. That's a little bit about how this 20-year journey has been, where I've never been in a moment where we're sitting up there inhaling, going, hey, this is who we are. We've made it. And there's probably an unhealthy amount of paranoia that has been built in to my DNA from where I've come from that drives people crazy who have to work with me.
Yep.
But at the same time, gets manifested in the culture that we have to continually get better. And, I'll give you an example. I just got back from a big Qualtrics event the last couple of days where we had all of our leaders together for the President's Club. We were all there celebrating. And, someone came up to me and said, hey, wow, 20 years. Did you ever imagine there would be this many people from all over the world, 26 offices or whatever it was? And I said, as I look back over 20 years, I just see moments where we defied gravity.
Yep.
Where we all came together and did something that no one thought we could go do. And that's kind of how I look back on it. So you say, hey, was there ever a moment where you thought this was a viable business? I still have an alert on my phone that hits me every 2 weeks that says payroll, right? And I still get this little feeling okay, are we going to make payroll? Well, of course we're going to make payroll.
Yeah.
We've got, but it still reminds me of and I keep it there because of that. I want to feel that.
Yeah. So Ryan, I know you're saying you don't really get too excited, but the relationship with your dad and your brother and him telling you to go get a job and all this other stuff. When you made the Forbes 40 under 40 list, did you kind of sit there and it's all right,
I'm still a goal of mine.
All right. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm okay at this level. I'll get to this level. I told you it was right. I mean, there's humility between it, but every now and then you might want to pat on the back out of 16, 17 years.
Well, if I go through, there's always and it's just the way I think I'm wired. There's been always headwinds and people that have doubted us along the way. And you kind of use that as motivation. Even in 2017, right? We tried to go get financing and raise money. We raised money at $2.5 billion. And I remember we offered our employee base the ability to actually come in and exercise and partake of some of that. It's kind of the first time that had ever happened around here. And like, that was a beautiful day, but there was a lot of people who were like, this is it. This is as big as we're going to get. And then a year later, it goes even bigger. And then now, like, you know, the last 3 weeks, the entire stock market's pretty much gone to a spot I haven't seen in 15 years or 10 years, right? Since 2007, 8. I mean, it's not looking great. And like, you still have these obstacles where you have to come together and power through. And so it seems like there's never really been smooth sailing. It's always been turbulent. And so for me, that's a big thing to keep you going. It's like, there's almost not time to go and say, hey, let's focus on other things.
Now let's dive into Silicon Slopes. You know, you got Silicon Valley, and that was one of my favorite times about being in Deer Valley, getting to meet you all. You know, Josh James, Clark Miyazaki is my good friend.
Clark's a good guy.
Yeah.
And just learning so much about, you know, you guys from Utah, BYU, just the whole Silicon Slopes and just the brilliance that's there. How have you used that to your advantage, or how have you used it as leverage in, you know, painting a picture of Utah and kind of transitioning into basketball with the Utah Jazz, how that can, you know, attract some folks?
Yeah, so I think Utah's always been a pretty amazing destination that people come to. Like, whether it's they come in, they visit the national parks. You know, I feel like every neighbor in Deer Valley, or everyone that's up there in Park City, is from California, right?
Yeah,
like,
but the Hennessy is like $20 a drop, though. You got to do something about that. The Hennessy out there is $28 a glass.
Yeah. And it's only got half the alcohol.
Yeah, only
right?
half the alcohol. I wonder what that means.
Yeah. So the idea is, like, people come here, but there was never industry, right? And there really wasn't a reason why there wasn't industry, because if you actually look at like some of these hubs where it's Silicon Valley or it's here, it really goes down to a factory of talent. Is there talent there? And you mentioned Josh, you mentioned Clark. We all kind of came out of the same factory of talent. And, you know, you have about 100,000 college kids within a 60-mile radius of Salt Lake, which is unique. Yes. You know, if you pull Stanford out of Silicon Valley or Cal, like, it completely changes the makeup of that place. And so you have a lot going for it. You've got a lot of attraction. You've got a lot of people. It's a great place. It's super entrepreneurial. And I think what we were lacking was just success breeds success. And so once people started seeing, you know, that companies could be successful here, other companies started. And then at what level could the success be? Could you raise venture capital? And then that became where every venture capitalist in the world was turning over rocks in Utah, calling me about companies I didn't know of, right? So that the show was up. Like, they knew that it was here. And then they started seeing, like, well, could you go public? Could you actually be a public company? And then we had like 6 IPOs in 1 year in tech, which I think was, you know, as much as downtown New York City, right?
Right.
Or you had venture capital. How much venture capital could come in? It's like, we raised more money in Utah in a year a couple of years ago than I think almost anywhere else but outside Silicon Valley. Then you look at population growth. Yeah, I mean, I think we're 40,000 homes behind in the state of Utah right now. And so you look at all of these factors, and then, like, what could happen? Like, how big could you get? And so as all of this happened, we kind of got together and said, hey, we're all individually trying to tell our own story. What if we actually put our logos aside? Let's actually all get behind Silicon Slopes. Let's get behind one cause. Let's raise it. If someone's coming to do an interview from Forbes or Fortune, I know it feels good to have your face on the cover or my face on the cover. Let's actually include all of us. Let's turn the stories into Utah. And it worked. And I think that that's what's helped create this moment. And it's not a moment. This is here to stay. Utah is probably the second or third biggest tech hub, or will be, I believe, in the United States going forward.
Yeah. So Ryan, you can always be seen sitting, courtside of Utah Jazz games, along with Qualtrics working with the NBA in some areas. What possessed you to want to get into the team? Like, was it just your big likability with it, or were you a big fan, or was it your childhood dream of being an NBA pro, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So like I still hoop. I played ball this morning, right? I play at 6 a.m. Like I'm over 40 and still able to run and move. So I feel like that's like a good place to start. Like, I just love it. I love ball. And then I think the more I got close to the league and I started to understand the dynamic and the competitiveness and the impact that the NBA can have, not only on the court, but in the community. As I started working with the league on the tech side, it just sucked me in. Like, I think just like everyone who's been close to it, it's like, whoa, like people are very intrigued about the operation of the NBA. Everywhere I go, it's like people want to talk. Right. And I get it. Like, it is an incredible organization. It is an incredible platform. And like, I never really thought that, wow, this was going to be a possibility until it kind of happened.
Right.
I saw an amazing excitement on your face when it got announced, and you just brought a different type of energy to it. I think we were trying to see what that next wave of NBA ownership looks like. We've always tried to, look to see what that's like in all the leagues. But what you just said in terms of everyone wants to know what goes on the operational side of an NBA team, what value do you think you add to being an owner?
Yeah, I mean, Adam told me right when we took over, he was just like, Ryan, like the mistake people make, or the emphasis I would say, was bring everything you brought to your other business here. Like, and that was kind of encouraging, because it's like, wait a minute, like, and that's the first question I got. Like, what kind of owner or governor are you going to be with your group, or how's this going to go? And reality is, like, I'm Ryan. Like, that's who I am. Like, I don't have two stories. It's like one story. This is who we are. Like, I've led an organization. We've built an organization. We built a lot of different things. Like, we're just going to bring that. I don't have anything else to bring. Like, it's not like I'm going to go try to be someone I'm not. Like, I wear my hat backwards. I wear my hat backwards. It reminds me that it's still who I am. And that's probably why I do it. Like, nothing's changed.
Yeah, but you ever think when you decide to buy the team from the Miller family and things were going on, you had crazy situations in Utah, did you ever in your head, because when I read your bio and everything, you're an all-inclusive individual. So like the same way that you told the other people in the tech company, like, it's opposed to us all getting these magazine covers and all this, let's join together. Do you feel like, I think like you can change the narrative of, Utah, and your personality of being a governor or owner can bring in more players?
Yeah, I mean,
like, I just from a distance, just like when I first met you, you probably don't even remember. I was like, damn, that's a dope dude. And then I was like, Utah really needs that. And I'm not saying that in a negative sense, but I'm like, your open disposition and your influence, sometimes it only takes one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if you look at, like, let's take a step back to even our ownership group. Like I obviously am from Utah. Yes. And I know the Millers, and we were able to work out a deal as kind of a succession, right? Yeah. That's how I look at it, is like, hey, 30 years, incredible run. It's not like we're taking over. I mean, it's the second winningest franchise in the last 30 years. That's also a massive responsibility. Right. And the Millers, I mean, Larry Miller was a maverick. Like, this guy was, like, if you read about it, and just getting an arena here, like, he was hosting games in Vegas to make payroll half the time. Like, no one knows this stuff. Like, he was an icon in this league. And so to be able to take that over is both an opportunity and a responsibility, right? And so I wanted to say, at first it was like, okay, am I going to do this alone? Who am I going to do it with? And my first call was to Ryan Sweeney, who was my venture capitalist, who at Excel Partners, who had backed me throughout all of Qualtrics. And our thought was, well, let's get the smartest people around. We don't want a lot. We do not want a lot of people because I've also seen that being a disaster. And so our second call was like, hey, like we have a friend, Mike Cannon Brooks from Atlassian in Australia, who's a big hoops fan and represents a different region of the world. Like, could we use that? And you know, he's like Elon over there, right? Like, could we use that? And would he be interested? And both of them were like, first of all, I love basketball. I trust you. And I'm all in on Utah. Right. And then we said, all right, game's locked. That's it. Like, that's how we're going to do this. We're going to go. And then, you know, we kind of closed the deal. We were going through it. And then I get a call from D Wade saying, hey, talk to me about ownership. And I was like, whoa, like I'm looking at this team and this is here. And I was like, well, if I was ever going to go down a road, you'd probably be the #1 draft pick, D Wade. Right. like everyone loves D Wade. Like, and I had known him through Clark and like everything else, just like Dre, like we do. And it became like, we sat down, we talked, and it was like, hey, look, I think that like you could really help the group shape. And I don't think any of it, but we got to just lock arms and go together. And that's how we operate. And, you know, I'm the only one in Utah. I'm here. And then we recently, you know, brought in Danny Ainge, who, you know, I've known for 15 years. And I think he's one of the best basketball minds in the world, 44 years in the league, player, coach, president. And has kind of seen it all with 3 rings. And like, I think that, you know, between 6 rings of D Wade and Ainge, like, I think they got a pretty good idea what that level looks like. And the thing I hope to be able to add is, you know, the only thing we're missing in Utah is we just don't have a championship.
Right.
And that is like, if I could bring that and we could bring that for this group, for the Miller family, like that's what we want. How that goes, I don't think anyone knows. Like, I don't think you know when you're in it, like, except for when you fall short and you're a little bit like, whoa, I guess we didn't quite have as much as we needed. Or you just got to bring more than the next person. And Dre, you know all about that, what it's like to be in there. It's like, it's not like you're sitting there in the second round going, we got this ever.
Right. Ever. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Exactly. You know, I mean, we're sitting, you know, in a good position right now, but I'm still, like you said before, I'm still looking at the holes. I'm like, we ain't good enough. And the guys are like, whoa, why is it so harsh? And I'm just, it's having that appropriate fear. It's not saying you're not good enough. You have to have that confidence. But like ET says, you know, you have to have the humility and say, we still got to humble ourselves and understand it's supposed to be hard. And when you embrace the challenges through the journey, you know, you'll always have the right perspective on things. But, you know, we always talk about, you know, I think every week, Evan and I have the conversation on, you know, player empowerment, you know, how do players get skin in the game? Do you think the D Wade template will happen more with players getting into, you know, ownership stakes with teams across the league, or what's your views on that?
I think D Wade's a template on a lot of fronts, right? If you look at like, okay, you know, naturally basketball career is so long, like what is the next phase and how do you leverage the moment that you're in to set yourself up? I think Dwayne's probably done about as good a job as anyone I've seen, specifically because nothing was handed to him. Right. And so he's relatable to a lot of players because it's not like he came out and was just the #1 pick coming out and just like, he had to earn it all. Right. And I think that's, you know, I was going back and forth with him this morning about business stuff and like what he was working on and everything. And it was like, he is grinding, like he is in it. And, and it's like, it's the same thing. And it's like, we compare a lot of notes. It's like, okay, how do you think about the next chapter, the next phase? And to me, everyone, you know, a lot of people tie him as like, okay, well, he's a basketball player and that's why he's part of the group, or he's a former athlete or this or that. But actually he's a lot more than that. He's a sharp business mind. He's a hard ass worker. Like you go through all of that. And so when you put him with Sweeney and myself and coach and Danny and Cannon Brook, like it feels right. And so, because everyone's self-made.
And so, go ahead.
So I think that's it. I mean, when it comes to, this is the only league I know as of 2 seasons that felt like they were together. So I don't know, the history of the league all the way through from maybe when you started and how it is. But what I do know is like, okay, every brand is a much bigger thing than it's ever been before. Right. Every personal brand. And this is inside or outside of basketball. And so the dynamic of like what we're going to see 10 years from now and how brands end up shaping like a collective team is super interesting. And I mean, we could do a whole segment on like the evolution of a brand, both individually, team, and as a league, because it's like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or however you look at it. And I think we're in an uncharted world. I was in a meeting this morning on the Jazz, and they said, when our president showed up here, they had everything was in print, and they had one Sunday talk show, and that was it.
Right.
Like that was it. That's like all you heard about the Jazz was either in a printed paper. So they like jersey colors didn't even show up. Like in a Sunday talk show. And so you look at the evolution of that, it's pretty crazy, but also exciting.
So speaking of that, the evolution, the player power dynamic, you just spoke, it was one Sunday show, everything was in print, and you really got your information from one source, and that source kind of guided your opinion and your perception of things. And with the way players have taken their voice, I love Draymond and the new media campaign he's coming up with, hear straight from the source. I don't want to get my words twisted from someone else. So with you being new, entering as an owner, most recently, you're probably the newest owner. There might be 1 or 2 more recent owners, but you're one of the newer ones. So what are your thoughts on the power dynamic in the league and the growth of players' power and freedom, over the last 10 years and kind of where it's going and how you can see, what are your thoughts on where it should go and how we can channel it? Because at the end of the day, I always say we're partners in this thing and we both want the pot to grow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's actually the best point is like, okay, how like we have probably, in my biased view, probably the most exciting league that I see to watch. And, you bring someone courtside or you come to an NBA game and the amount of people are saying that's the best sporting experience I've ever had in my life. Right. Like you hear that, you get that, you see, whether it's pop culture, whether it's just culture in general, the way that a community can rally around it. And then the amount of games you play, like, I think we've got something incredibly special. I think the foresight on what that becomes is incredibly important going forward. Not only the relationship between just the players in the league, but even technology, right? So like fan engagement, streaming, all of these things are coming very quick. And no one has a crystal ball to say, hey, these are the 4 steps that should make. So what you have to do is truly just form a partnership and come together around that. Is everything going to be on a mobile? Is betting going to be, a big part of what you're going to see in the arenas? And then how does that distract from the game? What are the unintended consequences
there we go.
of that, right? And okay, well, wait a minute. You've got extra pressure on calls and refs and everything else for the wrong reasons. Right.
Yeah.
So it all plays in. And so I think that, I'm a big fan of Adam Silver and his ability to look ahead and navigate, and we'll see. And I think it's no different than what you're looking at Qualtrics, or you're no different than these are the same challenges or opportunities that you have. But I think the best thing is we're coming at it from a position of strength. And that's what, I see the most, the fan power, the community power behind the Utah Jazz this season, the last 2 seasons. And you've seen it, so much. Whether it's in Boston or you've seen it in California, in San Francisco and Golden State. Like, it's powerful. There's nothing that brings it together like that. Yeah. And, you know, I remember when we were at the US Open together, like when we were at Pebble Beach, like everyone was walking by, Dre. Like this is, you guys were right off that. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we got to keep that up.
So Ryan, I was wondering, how do you set up your players for success on and off the court? Like during their playing career and afterwards, is that a goal of your ownership group, or is it by the, you know what I mean? Just you stop by, somebody asks you advice and you just say, hey, you should do this and the other. Like, is that a priority for you?
Well, like it's not something, I mean, it's not something that we sit down and say, hey, like this is like a longitudinal plan. I think that we have been thoughtful about saying, hey, what is the player experience with the Utah Jazz? Like, let's take it from the time they land. And this is something, you know, I come from the experience world. This is what we do for, you know, Delta Airlines or whoever. And we say, okay, let's take the experience from the second you book your flight all the way to the time you get back home. What's that experience? So we're saying, hey, what is the player experience for the Utah Jazz? What does it mean to be a Utah Jazz player? Like, what does it mean to be a Utah Jazz alumni? Right? Like, and I'm looking and saying, hey, well, we can turn this up a bit on what that can be all the way through. And then when it comes to like what success could look like, I think there's two things. Number one is like, you know, are you approachable? Are you approachable so someone can come ask you that question? Yes. And I think, you know, we're the youngest ownership group in the league, right? So hopefully there's some age appropriateness. I think that, you know, I've had players come up to me, hey, how do you feel about this coin? What do you think about NFTs? Like, how are you going on that? Like, and I like that. Like, come up and talk to me. Like, let's go through, let's chat. But I also think that, like, hopefully we're an example of the people we have put together, so we don't even have to talk about it. Like, like I think that's really what it is. Like, they see D and they're like, hey, Dwayne, what's this? Or Sweeney, like, hey, I just saw you did a big investment into GOAT and SeatGeek. Like, tell me about it. Like, you just did Rally, you know, which is going to do all the collectibles. Like, I want to, wait, you actually were the dude who like backed Venmo. Like, how does this work? Like Spotify and Dropbox, like, and like, how does that work? And so I think that but it also takes people looking at it. So, you know, Mike Conley might be very different than someone else who's just starting their career. Right. But like Rudy's always coming up to me, Rudy Gobert, and asking about like, hey, check out these NFTs. This is what I'm doing. Like, or Rudy Gay, or like whoever it is, like people, I would love that. And by the way, if I don't know the answer, like, great, go talk to Ainge. How did you get involved? Like, you went player coach this, like, wow, you've been around for a long time. What was it like getting, like, would Bird give you the ball if you missed 2 shots? Right. Like,
that's a real thing. That's a real thing. I know personally that's a real thing. Better make a couple.
So I think that, I mean, the real answer is like, all we can do is just create an environment. That's all we can do. And we want to create the best Jazz Utah environment as possible.
I was wondering, I had this random question because, what is it? Who's the owner of Atlanta? Ressler?
Tony Ressler.
Yeah, I remember they were doing this 60,000, the gully, you know, you travel under. I guess putting in 60,000 new residences, and you know, when the Whole Foods pulls up, it's about to be for real. You know what I'm saying? But one thing that they said was like, since we played, we couldn't be part of that investment. And I don't want to get you in trouble or, you know, lose, you know, Donovan or one of your top players. But was there ever something where you could look back and be like, hey, he has enough money that this might be worth calling it now and investing into this deal? You know what I mean? Because a lot of deals that occurred, you guys make the value, and we can't do anything about it because we're players. Like,
it's interesting because like you go down I-15 in Utah and you see Stockton to Malone dealerships, right?
Yes.
And I think those days are over.
Right?
Yes.
Probably why we have everything there. And like, there really is a scenario where like, if I own over 5% of a deal, then it becomes very difficult for that. The problem I see is Sweeney owns 5% of every deal, right? And so, we're kind of landlocked on everything. But I think that there's enough with the league. I mean, we're hosting the All-Star game next year. I think the Tech Summit will be really, really interesting with what we can bring to that and help Adam and others like kind of drive that together. I think that there's enough there. There's enough around. There's even looking or helping that there's plenty to go around. And I'll just tell you, if you just index to Utah over the last 5 years and just said, hey, I'm going to invest in every single startup in Utah, you would be like brilliant. It would be better than any shoe deal, anything else that's there. But it's also like, it's also hard because, you know, Dre, you and I talked about this once. You were like, hey, I'm thinking about raising a fund. I'm thinking about doing this. I'm doing that. And I was like, hey, like, let's think about this for a second because, you know, you've got these massive funds. Like, actually, how do you drive your value? Maybe sometimes without all of your money. And that's what I think a lot of players can probably do a better job with. At, you know, it happened a while ago in golf, where these golf brands were coming up and players were getting sponsorships. And some players were like, hey, I want $200,000. I mean, I remember talking to Johnny Miller about this in the day with his deal with Callaway. Like, if the option was I could go take stock and leverage that, the returns were enormous.
Yes.
Right. And so how do you actually go? And I think if you're a company starting out, what you want to do is increase your likelihood for success. So how can someone with your connections, your expertise, your brand lend the ability to increase success for that company to make it? And if you can do that, then I think that's what's important.
I think you're debunking the small market sentiment, because I think you just spelled it out so eloquently, and the value that you can add, the value of just being in your market is incredible. But the kind of switch lanes and the kind of, you know, humanize you to your core. And, you know, I see that a lot. Other folks may not be able to see it because you like to hide behind the scenes, which I love with your philanthropic endeavors. And
your name, because Ryan Smith, all the moves you make, there's no way you just got a name like Ryan Smith. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. I'm like, bro, you know what I mean? I was reading all your accolades. I'm like, bro, Buddy's name should be billions or something.
But to break it down to what I'm talking about is your, you know, 5 for the fight. And you have a jersey patch that's not a sponsorship, which is first of its kind. And I think that speaks volumes about you. So can you kind of tell us about your 5 for the fight and the mission and what it means to you?
Yeah, this was you know, the jersey patches are being sold, but they're also in a partnership with the players. So it's split. Like the teams get part and the players get part. And so they can't be given away. Right. This has a rack. It has a rack rate. And it was actually how I first started really getting involved in the Jazz is I think you have the arena sponsor and the jersey sponsor. And those are the two biggest, you know, real estate options that you have as someone from the community getting involved. And, you know, we had launched this idea that like, we're going to be incredibly philanthropic. Cancer research is a big part of what we do. Like, we got to figure out a better way. We specifically don't believe that our best and brightest individuals in the world are actually choosing to go into cancer research. They might be going to rockets and tech and other things. And like, we wanted to help shape that, where if we could pull 20 more of the brightest researchers, we're going to have, you know, 500 more breakthroughs. Seems pretty simple when you think about it from the tech side. But what were we going to do to help that? And so we took that patch and, Mike, who was a co-founder of this, like, came in and was like, dude, if you're all in on cancer, don't put Qualtrics on the jersey, put 5 for the fight. And it freaking hurt. because that first year, like Don's winning the dunk contest, and instead of Qualtrics, which enterprise companies don't have a lot of like
correct
sexiness or splash or whatever it is.
It's like weather tech.
Yeah. It's like weather tech. Like brand is everything. And I'm sitting there going, okay, 5 for the fight. Like, what is that? But we've raised, 30 going to $50 million. And this is where I understood and learned for the first time the power of the platform of the NBA to do good. Because if we would have launched 5 for the fight on our own, there's no way we would have had that big of an impact. Like, and this has become like a major staple to the organization, and 30 other brands have come on where they donate $5 per paycheck per employee. And, you start that adds up. And so it's been pretty incredible. And it's also like parlayed us into, our scholarship program and some of the other things we've done this year.
About that a lot. I love when you tweet about the scholarship program, even when you're winning. It annoys me because you guys been winning a lot, but I love seeing that part. It eases the pain of you winning all the time.
So we've done 112 scholarships for underrepresented minority individuals to go to college. And this is all room and board, all books, everything. And we've done one for every win. And we wanted something that was, that showed what we stood for all the time. I don't want to have to remind people like what we stand for. Every win, like we share. And that's part of it. And there's no way that would have happened if we hadn't understood the power of 5 for the fight. And when I sat down with my wife and said, hey, we're going to be doing this NBA thing. And she's like, wait a minute, Ryan, like we just got out of 20 years of turbulent hell, but amazing times as well in building this. And now you're going to go like, you want to go do this, which is like, it feels a mix between a community asset, a nonprofit, and like the most competitive thing you've ever done, which you don't control, and a lot of money and everything else. Like we have to there has to be a bigger mission. You've got to do good with it. And so we kind of looked at it, and I told her, I said, okay, great. Those are the rules. Like I feel it, you feel it, like, let's go. And so when this idea of the scholarship for every win, and I mean, it's been one of the cooler things we've done.
So your wife thought once you sold the company for $8 billion, she said, I thought we were going to rest on our laurels. And you're like, you know what? You finna be working right with me.
It finds you, right? It finds you. But
I like that.
It's an adventure.
So going back to 5 for the fight, how was watching your dad go through his situation with cancer and still working on Qualtrics with you? How did watching him go through all that shape you and help you power through your toughest days?
I think, with my father going through it, and, he fortunately survived because there was a researcher who had come up with a way to like get his cancer out without ruining him. Right. A lot of cancer, like you don't know whether someone doesn't make it because of the cancer treatment or the cancer itself.
Correct.
And, my
father passed of cancer. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, like either the 27 sessions of chemo are going to get this person, or when they recover, they're never going to be the same anyways. Right. And that was my dad. Like my dad lost probably 10 years off his life, definitely, but fortunately was able to do that. My stepfather wasn't that lucky. Like he had multiple myeloma, and, he passed away a couple of years ago. And so it's a little bit like, okay, like two really prominent figures in my life have both been hit with cancer, and there's not a more helpless feeling. Like when someone calls you and says, I have cancer, like that, we're back to experiences. That might be one of the worst experiences. Like there couldn't be a worse experience at some level than that. I was just down at this leaders trip, and I'm sitting there with one of our leaders and his wife, and they're only in town for 2 days from Toronto because their daughter is going through another round of chemo which is like 16 different sessions because the tumor came back in a 5-year-old. Like, they're helpless. They don't know what to do. And I would love that we had a day at some point where it was like, okay, we know this is rough, but it's going to be okay, with confidence. Like, it's going to be okay. And we're not there yet,
right.
But like, I'm hopeful that we can get there. And like, I think the part to me is, I remember when we were starting out, my dad couldn't talk and he couldn't speak because it was in his throat, that I just committed. Like, I remember sitting up in the cancer center saying, if we make this through it and Qualtrics does something, like, our foundation or our goal is that we're going to be giving back to this. And I'll never forget going up to that cancer center and saying, hey, I brought them down to our office. I said, you are a charity. We're going to give back to you. And they're like, okay, great. What does that mean? I was like, oh, no. We don't have any money yet. But when we do,
right,
you're going to get some. Right. And it started with $1,000 per employee per year. And their first check they're getting is like, okay, here's $5,000, here's $10,000, here's $20,000. Next thing you know, here's $20 million. And now we're going to get others to go through. And, you know, you kind of have to be reminded along the way, have you changed? I mean, you said you were going to do this.
Right.
Like, did you change?
Yeah, we've been seeing that a lot lately.
Yeah.
We've been seeing that a lot.
We, you know, to this point, like, I think that if you can ride it out and just do what you say you're going to do. Like, if you say it, you do it. That is hopefully a pretty good, you know, flag to plant in the hill and go charge towards that.
Yes, sir.
So, Ryan, you were saying earlier this year, you tweeted like a TBT picture back in the basement. It's like 20 years ago with your dad and like your brother. You said the reason why you're an entrepreneur is so you can write your own story. What do you think the Cliff Notes version of your story will be? If you could foresee it, can you get up? You know what I mean?
Because the other side of it was you at the exchange with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I never really thought of that. I think. Will your snapback be involved? Well, like, I'll be honest with you. Like, the only reason why I wore I normally would wear it forward, but we have a deal with New Era, and it's a little deep for my head, so it fits back. But now it's become like a staple. So it's like everyone thinks it's part of it. But I think, you know, hopefully my story is much more around like my kids liking me, my wife liking me. Like,
that's a big thing.
I think that's like if I go all in and I'm super successful at everything I do, but like I don't have the ones closest to me, like it comes at that cost. Like I've seen this too many times where like you've got to be able to try to scale it all. Like, you got to be able to scale the whole thing. Like, a lot of people can scale one side of it at the expense of the other. And so that's where it gets hard. And so if I can stand back and, you know, one day at my funeral, my kids are going, hey, he did his part here. And then on the business side, people are like, hey, he did his part here. Or I helped drive change and made the world better. Then that's all cool. Because at the end of the day, like, no one remembers who the best business dude of the 1800s was. Name it. I don't know.
Like Rockefellers? I don't know.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Those might be 1900s. I don't know.
Four people, the first four.
Yeah. Who's the best business dude in 1700? Like, I don't know.
True.
Like
so, this book that's telling us though, The Sovereign Individual. Yeah, we're reading about a temperature drop by 3 degrees and it almost turned the whole world upside down because all the crops died. We didn't have technology, so we reading it. We keeping up. We get deep in our bag.
So I don't know. Like I try not to think too hard about legacy and stuff like that because I think it's. I mean, dude, I'm young.
Yeah.
I'm still young.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, for me, I just really want to say thank you for your time. This has been one of the more educational, not just from, throwing numbers and data around, but just kind of like, I love the way your intentions are set up. You really have an intent. And what I took the most from it is, when you say you're going to do something, you do it. Yeah. And at the same time, just embrace, the grind of the journey. And you got to tackle things as if all the odds are against you and you just gotta get through it. But your intentionality is something that I'll never take for granted. So just appreciate you for the time. And I hope I don't get in trouble by the league. Evan, I want you to close this out, Evan. But I hope I don't get in trouble by the league by saying, all you free agents out there, we got a hidden gem. And don't shy away from, experiencing something special, because I do think you're building something special. I'm not just saying that because you're here, like that's real. Like this is one of the realer conversations I've had, especially from a Caucasian who I consider, when I see you, I don't see Caucasian. I hope that doesn't get me in trouble either, but thank you.
I don't know how to take that, but
Dre loves
I'm glad I'm glad you're talking to all three free agents this year.
Hey, has Gobert asked you the Shaquille O'Neal question or no?
I thought Shaq's response was good. Did you see Shaq?
I saw Shaq's response. I was like, bro, it's nothing disrespectful, but Shaq will give you work. Like, you're too goddamn big. He transfer out. Like, shit. Like, bro, that's not even disrespectful. Like, what? My
Shaq
buddy
said his name, which is a lot. It means a lot.
But my buddy once said one time, he was like, man, if I went to heaven, who would I pick first? And I was like, I guess Jesus, as you see these pictures behind. And my buddy was like, shit, the Diesel's up there, I'm picking him. The Diesel's up there, I'm picking him first. Then the guy got a jumper, sure.
I thought Shaq's response was really cool. He was just like, that's exactly how I would respond. That's how we should respond. I'm trying to push these guys and challenge these guys. And like, you own it. And, it's good.
All right. Well, appreciate you once again, Ryan. Thank you for all the pregame and the hour plus worth of your time too. Really appreciate it.
Hey, we're hosting All-Star next year.
No, we will be there 100%. We're spending. ET and I are spending. Let's say Friday through Sunday or Thursday through Sunday. I'm promising you, we will be there. We're going to experience Utah because I know what it has to offer, and we're going to have a ball, and we're going to be.
Hey, and we'll set up a spot for you for your pod.
Yeah, that'll be dope.
No, we're locked in. Handshake virtually.
All right.
Can you get that Hennessy situation ironed out before we get there?
Yeah, I think D Wade will have all that stalled with some Wade wine there for you.
All right, cool. Well, I just don't. Like I said, I don't want to pay $50 a drop.
You're like, am I at the airport?
I was just like, damn. Like, am I really reading what I'm reading? I'm like, I know NBA players are frivolous, but this is wrong. You know what I mean?
All right.
Okay,
guys. All right.
Take care. Thanks again.
All right. Have fun. Good luck tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you.